Rebirth is a nonprofit arts agency that promotes artists in the Michigan area as well as nationally. Sometimes we do school concerts. We just got through doing a school concert that was co-sponsored by the National Endowment, and we did about 15 high schools. And this is to introduce the bebop jazz to students, music students, as well as the general populace, you know, of the school. Then sometimes we do tours around the Midwest, like in Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, and Pennsylvania, sometimes Kentucky, whatnot. All the efforts is actually geared to promote jazz and promote its excellence out of Detroit. And then we also produce records and record. We have a recording studio also, and we also publish books, which currently we publishing the Bebopper's Method book, which is distributed all over the world by Jamie Amasal and Carl Fisher. So that's primarily in the colleges and the high schools and some of the stores across the country. And also I'm dealing with kind of like a New York group, Cecil McBee, Kirk Lightsey, and Doug Hammond, we're planning a tour in January and February throughout the Midwest and some places on the East Coast with that particular unit. Also, Rebirth is they present. We're in the process of presenting the Jazz Hand Orchestra with Joe Williams coming up in January also. And we've been featuring artists like Eddie Harris, Leon Thomas, Freddie Hubbard. We brought Freddie Hubbard in with 40-piece orchestra with strings. And we brought in Lou DeBacken and also Mark Murphy. So we've really been pretty involved in trying to get the music out on all kinds of levels, including doing workshops in various locations.
Okay, you talked about this New York group with Cecil McBee and
Right.
Kurt Lacey. They sound pretty interesting. How'd you get to be associated with them?
Well, I've been knowing these guys a long time. We used to hang out and play together in the early '60s and the '50s. Kurt used to play at the Hobby Show Bar. Cecil McBee used to do a lot of performances with Harold McKinney and myself. Then I moved to New York in the '60s and started performing with Grant Green and Hank Crawford, Sun Ra, Betty Carter, different artists. And then they followed me. They came later. I think they went in the service at that time. Then they came later and started performing. I think Cecil was with Charles Lloyd, Yusuf Lateef, bunch of folks. Kurt Lacey was with Demita Joe and Dexter Gordon for a long time. And while these guys was touring with these different units, I came back to Detroit. And now we finally decided to like hook up and trying to actually get some of this music out, because we did an album that would be on CD in December, and they're playing a lot of my original compositions as well as Pamela Wise's compositions, and album will be really promoted all over the world. Primarily, I like the feel that they have, and they're really keeping the Detroit legacy alive in terms of what the way we approach jazz and the way we conceptualize jazz. Cecil McBee and Kurt Lacey. Doug Hammond is old friend. He produced the album that was released on my label back in '75.
That wasn't the Rebirth label, was it?
That was a Tribe label. This is back in '75. I'm pretty sure it's back. It was called the Sea of Nernan. And plus, I met him in the '60s also. So these guys are comrades and artists that I really enjoy performing with. Distinctive sound of Detroit is refined. I give you the opposite. Like Chicago is like a raw sound. Blues come out of Chicago, raw blues. Let's say avant-garde. You got the Sunrise from Chicago, the Chicago Art Ensembles from Chicago, and then you have 1,000 blues singers. Now Detroit kind of takes the approach of refining, and they have, it's a feeling, but it's intellectual feeling. Whereas like you have people like Tommy Flanagan, Barry Harris, Paul Chambers, Donald Byrd. All these people came out of Detroit, and they have a highly developed technical approach to playing jazz. You know, you can hear a lot of intricate bebop lines, and the technique is really highly developed, as opposed to playing just like raw concepts and whatnot, and it's very thought out. Like a lot of these guys will just practice hours and hours and hours in the basement, you know, or in the attic or wherever, in parks, in, you know, tunes and and before they would even go to the stage with it, you know, really work it out. You don't find that in other areas of the country. You know, people are really studious around here. It's a conservative approach to playing jazz, very conservative. It's analyzed, it's rehearsed and nursed, and it's really when you see these guys perform, they're really together. And every year you have people coming out of the area, like you have Jerry Allen, she's playing piano. She's from Detroit. Bob Hurst, Kenny Garrett, all these guys are those are the recent people that came out of Detroit that's making national debut on different albums and stuff like that. Jerry's got her 2-3 albums out on her own, and you have Bob Hurst he was with Wynton Marsalis, now he's with Tony Williams, and Kenny Garrett's on Miles' album, and he's dealing with Freddie Hubbard. He was on Woody Shaw's album. Plus he's got his own albums out. And every year it seems like somebody's coming out of here just hitting the national scene, you know, with the Detroit bebop concept. In the 50s, it looked like everybody and their mother had a record contract, you know, at that particular time. It was a new thing to go. All these companies was dumping their money into jazz and getting it out. And see, jazz wasn't, back in the 50s, jazz wasn't considered music in terms of being endorsed by the institutions. It only became America's art form in the 70s, you know, and because you didn't have jazz band, like for instance, like over Northwestern. I graduated from Northwestern. Northwestern nowadays has a beautiful jazz band, you know, in highly developed jazz band under the direction of Ernie Rogers. When I was there, it was like a concert band and a marching band, and then you had a B band and an A band of that, you know, and you had to sneak into the band room and practice bebop because they wouldn't allow you to practice bebop in the band room. They called it noodling around. It had a guy, band director by the name of Hellstein. We come in there and try to play Donald Lee or Coco. Stop that fiddling around. And if you want to play that, you have to go home. you know. So we had to sneak into the band room. One morning, thing that really turned me on, I was in school about 8 or 9 o'clock, and I heard Roy Brooks and James Jamerson and Charles McPherson play a tune called Coco, which is Cherokee, bebop line off of Cherokee. And that wiped me out. I couldn't believe it. I said, what kind of music is this? What is this? You know, I knew about jazz, but the way these guys was playing the music and articulating the music, you know, really was impressive. It was taking tempos like this, real fast tempos. And would be playing, they wouldn't even move, and the notes would be like Charles McPherson, he would sit down just like this. It would be playing sizzling tempos, it wouldn't move, you know. He had his technique was superb, you know. Jameson, everybody think he's a Motown Fender funk bass player, but when I met Jameson, he was playing like Ray Brown, playing the upright bass, like Ray Brown. And all his motivations came out of the bebop idiom. Most musicians that wrote for Motown were bebop musicians, you know, that they wanted to actually make some money and really support themselves. Because playing bebop, you never did really make that much money, you know, playing jazz. So, like, these guys would actually make a lot of money writing pop tunes and arranging pop tunes for people like Diana Ross, all the Motown, Glass Knight, all the Motown artists. And that's indicative of the thing all over the world. You know, jazz musicians have to go out in other areas playing commercial music to actually make a living. The reason I want to try to focus on bebop, because bebop is one of the art forms in the idiom, in the jazz style, this really misunderstood, you know, in terms of the approach and concept. The straight ahead sound, let's say, the modal sound like train, is widely accepted and is widely promoted, you know, as opposed to the bebop sound, which was like actually segregated music, because Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, those musicians got their thing together just like you see these youngsters getting the rap thing together. It's like a subculture, and all of a sudden you see it all, you know, promoted, you know. Bebop came about the same way, you know. These guys was often in clubs and practicing in barns and after-hour places, you know. And the music was actually developed like that. And then record companies started recording it. You know, I'm not sure who was the first record producer that approached Charlie Parker or Dizzy Gillespie, but they started promoting and recording this music, and that's when it became popular, you know. But keep in mind, it was still a segregated thing, you know, as opposed to black musicians. Unlike today, they wasn't playing with white musicians, you know, as much in the 40s and in the 50s, you know. So the culture, it was hard for them to actually, white musicians to actually get the bebop tradition or the bebop concept, you know. Same with women. Women wasn't actually piano players, women piano players. It was hard to actually find a woman piano player, black woman piano player, or white woman piano player that could play bebop. Because bebop was created in the bowels of the black community, you know. People didn't want to go down there and hang out. You know what I mean? they want to go down there and hang out. We might get shot, and it wasn't a proper thing to do. Bebop is my pet. You know, I was raised in it, but I do cross meter and odd meter concepts and tunes. Sometimes I do avant-garde. I was with Sunrise back in the 60s, so a lot of his concepts rubbed off on me. Then I was with Hank Crawford in the 60s also, at a young age, about 4 or 5 years. In fact, I got about 10 albums recorded up under, with him as a band leader. And he showed me how to write and actually play the blues. I had gigs with Big Maybell. I used to work with Big Maybell, and a lot of blues singers. Worked with Lou Rawls, and so I got the blues concept in me also. Then I worked with people like Chuck Jackson and Marvin Gaye. I can go on and on and on and on. So I got a lot of these different concepts inside of me. I feel that pop music or funk music is a part of me. Fusion is a part of me. Bebop is a part of me. Even classics, I feel that's a part of me also. So, although these other art forms is primarily developed and created out of the black community, especially the bebop thing. So I usually promote that as my pet, because that's talking about my heritage. Sunrise, they think he's really out, but I played some legit gigs with Sunrise. We would play some of his compositions like Space is a Place and Venus and the Saturn tune and stuff like that. But I used to go to some of his rehearsals and or play gigs with him. I played in Harlem at the Baby Grad with Sunrise. And he played like Fletcher Henderson. He played Duke compositions like Prelude to a Kiss. He played In a Sentimental Mood, Satin Doll, real, I guess at that particular time it could be considered a commercial gig. And people would get up and dance, to Sunrise music. Then we go downtown to his apartment on 3rd Street, and he would put on a pot of greens and black eyed peas, and before we rehearsed, he would feed everybody, And at that time, he had Clifford Jarvis in the band and Ronnie Boykins. I was taking John Gilmore's place because he was with Art Blakely at the time, and Farrell was with Coltrane. So I enjoyed myself for what it was. And the Sunrise experience was very educational. He was self-motivated and self-contained, because he would put out these recordings, he would promote these recordings, and the media would pick up on these things and actually do reviews on his albums. And then he would actually book himself as well as contract other booking agencies to sell him, and to sell the band. And that's a heck of concept, to be self-sustaining like that. Rather, most artists, after you deal with the art form, they're looking around for somebody to come and promote them. You know what I'm saying? Or they looking around for somebody to actually do something for them, or actually put some money behind them, or record them and book them and do the job. That's great, you know. But the thing is, get it together for yourself first, and be able to market yourself and sell yourself, and develop your own business strategies to market yourself. So like when somebody else comes up and offer to promote you, you got some kind of awareness of what it's all about and what you're going to get in return and what you want that person to do. Because the main thing, managers and producers is working for you as the artist, as opposed to the artist working for managers and producers. Because like the music is first, and we all trying to work for the music and work for the betterment of the music in terms of getting it out. You know, a lot of people think it's the other way around. You know, the artist is working for the management, you know, company, or the producer, or the agency. You know, the agency is supposed to be involved in the process to be a servant to the music and servant to the artist to get the music out to the world. And they're supposed to be humble in that particular situation, in that position, you know. But that's my concept. Dealing with odd meters, that's like a African heritage and actually an African birthright. If you go to Africa, you hear all kinds of odd meters and rhythms, you know, out of their rituals and out of their particular local sound, you know, in that area. Over here, you hear on the radio 4/4 rhythm all the time, you know, which is European influence, and I guess it stems from marches, you know, and polkas and things like that, you know. But this is American society, and is dominated by a European concept, you know. So you have 4/4 all the time. So as a jazz musician, to actually to stimulate my playing and expression, I try to deal with odd meters. And I got that from Sun Ra also. He would write stuff in 7/8, 9/8, and sometimes he would have like 2-3 meters going on at once, you know, polyrhythms and stuff like that. 4/4, and then you have a 6/4 happening, then you might have a 5/4, then you might have a 7/8 on top of that, you know, multi-rhythmic. And one of the guys that really made this popular commercially was Alvin Jones and John Coltrane. When they would play a 4/4 concept, you could hear 3/4 going on. You could hear 6/8 going on at the same time. You could hear 3 different rhythms going on at the same time when these guys would play. You know, everything they would play would be in threes. Mm-hmm. You know, so that concept really was well, it became popular in the 60s, basically. Of course, Eric Dolphy and Freddie Hubbard dealt with a lot of odd meters. And we have a book that we published as Rebirth called The Compositions in Odd Meter. And Roy Brooks has a composition in there called 5 for Max. This is 5/4. Eddie Harris has his 1974 blues, which is in 7/4 time. And Pamela Wise has got a tune in there called Fly by Night, which is in 11/8. And I have a tune entitled Spank, which is in 7/8, you know. And we create these different books and for our development, you know, play tunes and composition that will be challenging so we can actually develop ourselves as musicians. Not necessarily to make money, you know, but we're constantly trying to strive for the excellence of the art form. My mother started me off on piano, keep me out of the street, give me something to do, you know, and for cultural awareness and that kind of thing. When I went to elementary school, I couldn't take the piano and play it in the band, so we had orchestras back in those days. So I played clarinet in the orchestra in elementary school, intermediate school, high school, until I ran into these jazz musicians in high school. It was Lonnie Hilliard, Charles McPherson, Jameson, and Roy Brooks. It's about 4 or 5 others in that band at the time. But the clarinet is a instrument that's not really recorded today like it was in the early 1900s. Like today, in the rock bands, you see the lead guitar. In the rock bands, in the jazz bands, you hear the trumpet and saxophone, and they're the main lead instruments of the day: alto saxophone, trumpet, guitar, that kind of thing. In the early 1900s, it's the clarinet that was popular, and the cornet, and violin, you know, and they was really recorded a lot. Sidney Bechet and you got people like really became popular, Benny Goodman and Buddy DeFranco and Jimmy Hamilton, John Carter, you know, all those guys with Duke Ellington's band. And those guys had to play, they played clarinet, saxophone, and all the saxophones. Clarinet is a real strange instrument. It's a classical instrument. It has a wood sound to it. And it's an old instrument. It was the first construction of the clarinet was in 1690. A guy by the name of John Christopher Denier was the first guy that constructed the first relic of a clarinet. And then years later, the Albert system was constructed, you know, in Germany. And then Theobald Boehm, or Boehm, it's B-O-E-T-M, he constructed the Boehm system, or the Boehm system, which is the clarinet of the day, and which plays in tune pretty well. Those other clarinets that's hired for them, in fact, I got an Albert system up there now. They came out of a museum in Steubenville, and Pamela Wise's father gave me that, and it's out of it's kind of, you know, it's hard to play in tune, and it only has 13 keys. The latest, the Boehm system got 15 keys. You know, so it's a lot better. It's more, it's a lot better, but it's not as easy as a saxophone. Now, clarinet has 4 octaves. That's an E, going 4 octaves. You know, I'm gonna demonstrate the different registers. Now that register there, lowest register, and they call that the Chalumeau, or Chalumeau register. It's a French word for dark and solemn. It's got supposed to I think they created that sound to imitate the organ, the low tones on the organ at that particular time. I'll play it for you again. Now, the next register, or the tones, is the throat tone section of the clarinet. Which is really soft, and that's controlled mainly by the throat. You can go out of tune or in tune by opening and closing your throat, you know. Then now, the next section is the clarion section, which is clear section. That's the third section, which is another sound altogether. All these sections got their own sound, their own fingerings, and they almost like instruments unto themselves. Now the last section is the acute register. That's the acute high register of the clarinet. Bird is like dog registered. You know, and the trick is to play all these different registers and tonals with dexterity, and make it sound like one instrument. You know, that's the trick, and that's the most difficult thing on the clarinet. You know, unlike the saxophone or flute, you know. You know, so that's a Lulu, you know, getting in and out of these registers, you know, and trying to make sense with it. Yeah. So, and you know, the thing on the clarinet, I like that wood sound and that open sound. You know, every time I play it, I really, people really get a kick out of hearing it, because they starve for that particular sound. You know, it's not recorded. And if you're a clarinet player, it's kind of hard too, because you don't hear it on the radio like you hear saxophone and trumpets and stuff like that. So you really have to do a lot of studying and research, and put a lot more energy into it in terms of trying to perfect the sound. You know, that's one of the reasons why we've got a clarinet ensemble happening over here every Wednesday to work on that sound and develop dexterity and keep something happening. Eventually, we're going to grow to about, it's only 5 now. We're going to grow to about 20 clarinets, and we're going to go on the bandstand and play things like Scott Joplin tunes and bird tunes, as well as train tunes and original compositions also. And we're playing odd meter. Now, we have right now bass clarinet, alto clarinet, and B-flat clarinet. I've been working with Louis Barnett on the clarinet, Paul Onachak, Charlie Gabriel, Beans Bowles, he's gonna be playing the bass clarinet. Yeah. So that's what we stirring up again. We all the time. It's something new happening all the time. I started playing when I was 14, 15, and we would play like high school proms. Place called the Urban League, Ferry Center. House parties and union halls, stuff like that. And actually, the scene back in those days, you could make a little bit. I made a lot of money in terms of it helped me with my school clothes and dealing with school books and stuff like that, you know. And I started traveling with Claude Black. We went to Cleveland with Claude Black, and I did went to Syracuse when I was 15 with big band with Teddy Harris and Choker Campbell's band, I think it was. We call it the Powder Puff Review. Powder Puff Review. They had a bunch of dances, chorus line dances, and things like that. And the clubs then I started. That's how I started. You know, with playing the different weekend dances and weekend clubs. I was too young to actually play in the clubs. I mean, to be employed in the clubs, because I was still in high school. But I used to sneak into the clubs and hear people like Miles Davis and Sonny Stitt, and used to sneak into the Klein Show Bar, Bluebird, you know, over on Time. I used to go to the West End and see a lot of people play. And then eventually, when I, like in the summertime, when I wouldn't be in school, I would travel to different cities with different jazz musicians. And for the most part, they had jam sessions, Chit Chat Lounge. They had jam sessions on Mondays where musicians would come all over to sit in. Klein Show Bar had jam sessions on Sunday. Yusuf with the Yusuf band. If you go down to it was like Rosa Parks Boulevard. Between the Boulevard and Claremont, you had about 5 or 6 clubs. You can go for club hopping. They had a club in every block. You start on Hazelwood. You start with the Eagle Show Bar. Then the next block you would go to the Spot Bar. Next block would be Klein Show Bar. Then it was the Chit Chat Lounge down there on Virginia Park and 12. At that time it was called 12. And you could go from Claremont, like I said, you could go from Claremont to the Boulevard, West Grand Boulevard, and hit quite a few clubs. And everybody was playing bebop and blues and bebop, you know. And you had to be crazy if you couldn't learn from all that music going on at that particular time.
Who were some of the bands?
Well, I used to hear Teddy Harris perform all the time at the Spot Bar. It was Washboard Willie. It was blues. Jazz and blues always went together. Yusuf. You had James Jameson and Earl Van Dyke at the Chit Chat. People would go bar hopping from block to block. They'd have to go, now if you go from bar to bar, you got to go from one end of town to the next. There was so much recording activity happening in New York at that time. It was actually to get wherever it was developed and get the hell out of town to New York and get a record contract, you know. So most guys left when they was about 15, 16, 17. As soon as they would get out of high school, because at that time, you didn't have music in college. In other words, jazz music wasn't in college at that particular time. Now you got jazz programs, curriculums in colleges and whatnot. Like, but no one was really interested in going further in their education on a formal level in music because it wasn't represented in the schools. I got a scholarship to Wayne. I never did use it, really, because I learned how to read and write music, the music I wanted to know about, on the road with Hank Crawford, you know, workshopping with Jimmy Owens and Howard Johnson and those people. Marcus Belgrave was in the band at that time, you know, and that's the way it was. And you could make a living. You could really make a living playing music in the 50s and 60s.